Awesome. Thank you so much, Jasmine. So we're going to dive into questions. So if you want to put them in the Q&A, you can go ahead. Some things I've seen just going through the chat a little bit. One thing that came up, there was a little bit of conversation about the reason why a lot of students don't want to paraphrase. Um,
Mhm.
some people talked about the fact that they use tools like Turnitin and like other plagiarism checkers, and students are worried that if they are paraphrasing and they do something incorrectly, that it would be considered plagiarism. Whereas I guess if they put it in quotation marks, great, they're fine. So I definitely understand that that has to be a challenge for students. Um, from our perspective, and I'm guessing from your perspective as well as teachers and librarians, um, paraphrasing in APA style is so important, not only because it creates a more readable, more useful scientific paper, but also because it requires students to read and really understand what they're writing. So, a lot of students, when they are quoting too much, a lot of times that is covering for a lack of understanding in what they're actually writing. You can just do quote, 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 and it doesn't really, it's not really asking you to understand the paper and put it together in your own words. So I don't know if there's a way to kind of have a conversation with your school leadership if they do get that automatic like plagiarism, if they get penalized for plagiarizing when they are paraphrasing, but it is really important for us and for APA style and for I think writing in general. Chelsea, do you have any ideas for that?
Oh, getting away from plagiarism checkers.
Well, not getting away from them, but the idea that it is safer in a way for students to quote because
Yeah,
they're not getting the marks off from the plagiarism
I
check.
feel I feel that. I mean, for one, I am not a fan of plagiarism checkers. Like the amount I've seen people saying it flagged me, but I didn't plagiarize. You always need the human follow-up. Like just because you used a plagiarism checker, even if you do, doesn't mean that you get to just say the AI said it was so and therefore that's true. Like you always have to follow up with a person to look at the specific situation. And so I think sometimes when these tools are introduced, it's meant to be like a way to make things faster, but in order to do it right, that's not necessarily faster because you can't just let people get run over by the the checker being like it's AI when it wasn't. I feel like that's the case that's most like tugging at my heartstrings. By all means, if you have somebody who just generated their whole paper, please flag that as AI, catch that person because they should be focusing on being able to develop and write. But in terms of like developing that skill to paraphrase, it's challenging and it takes a long time. But one of the things that I think really helps with paraphrasing and using your own words is to see if you can talk about your topic that you're writing about away from your computer without having your ideas in the quotations right in front of you. Like Jasmine, I spent many years working in writing centers as a writing tutor, and that was one of my top methods that I used with students when they were working on their papers. I would take their paper and I would turn it over so they couldn't look at it, and I would say, tell me about your paper. What are you trying to say? What's your main point?" And oftentimes they were kind of like, well, I don't know. And they would try to grab the paper and look. And I'm like, if you can't tell me what the main point is without having to like look back on it, then you're not really solid in what it is that you understand. And so whether that means explaining it to yourself or explaining it to others away from the computer and then like going back and checking and being like, did I characterize this properly? I feel like that is that's one of the best methods that I have found in order to like get out of the patch writing, like the potential of that patch writing process where it's like almost a quotation. Because people will ask us like, well, how much should I change to make it be a paraphrase versus a quote? And there's not an answer to that. Like, it all depends on what the sentence is and the idea that you're trying to communicate. And I think really knowing what is it, what's your idea, what are you trying to communicate, and how is that different from what the source that you're looking at was trying to do. I feel like developing that separation and being able to think outside of just being straight at the computer, it really helps with paraphrasing. I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts, Samantha, Jasmine?
I think that's great, Chelsea. Our next question is somebody said that they have problems with master's level students not doing the APA reading or using the APA resources because they think they already know how to do it,
Mm.
which leads to a lot of extra uh, work because then they realize they don't know and they have to go back. Are there any tips that you would give them for helping students understand that this is guidance that they need?
That's a
One thing
really good
I would
question.
say, while Chelsea's thinking,
Yeah.
is um, if you ask any member of the APA style team where their publication manual is, it is probably within a couple feet from them at all times when they're working. Um, we are in this all day, all the time, but we are consistently using our resources that we have, especially the publication manual. So no matter how much of an expert someone might think they are, I think I have 4 copies of the publication manual on my desk right now. It is designed to
Amazing.
be, it's not a skill that is easily memorizable or even should be memorized. It's about looking up the information when you need it. So I don't know if that helps at all, but if
Yeah.
your master's students don't need a publication manual, they are better than us.
I think something that might help. I wonder if referring to the sample papers might help. Like the sample papers is a finished product, particularly like there's the ones that are the annotated examples that are in the publication manual, they're in the concise guide, they're on our website, on our samples papers site, and maybe like adding that as a step of the like submission process. Like make sure you checked against the sample paper versus just make sure that you follow it APA style, because follow it APA style, like there's a lot of things that are a part of APA style and it's easier to be like, well, I know that. Whereas like maybe directing them to a specific thing, like go look at the sample papers, that maybe some things would jump out at the people who don't understand, that they don't know. Um, but I mean, to a degree, like you might not convince them until the grade comes back and you're like, no, you were wrong. Like, um, so I feel like the only alternative is like front loading it, or like taking some time to go over your expectations regarding like the most common things people tend to mess up. But
Steph,
it's an iterative process. It takes it's a journey.
Stephanie asks, what are your suggestions to integrating this information into doctoral courses pre-dissertation phase? They don't take a writing course or a welcome to doctoral skills course. And I think this also applies to any situation where you have students writing a dissertation, a research paper, or something like that, and they don't have like in many times they don't have an intro to APA style class or an introductory writing class where they can learn some of these basics. Some of my tips are to teach it within the context of your curriculum. So if you do have times when you are having students read research, even though it might look a little bit more introductory, have them use the anatomy of a journal article along with it. So they're really looking at the different parts of the paper, and teaching it incrementally over time. Like when they are reading research, pulling out like, okay, what are you noticing about this introduction or something like that? Um, Chelsea and Jasmine, any thoughts on that?
I think what you said was right on that this is a longer process, and it's the more you engage with the language, the more you're going to learn. So teaching it as you go and teaching it in context with the curriculum is probably the best way to go.
I feel like too with a doctoral student that the scope of a dissertation is bigger than other research projects that probably came before. Like when you're at a lower level in the undergraduate or like high school, maybe you're writing a research paper where you are doing research about the topic, but you're not like conducting an experiment necessarily. And so your paper is your you went and looked at the sources that were out there on your topic, and you're basically saying here's the state of things about this topic, here's what's available and what it says. And then as you go into a doctoral thing, they're having to design a project that will become the reason that they get their doctorate. And designing that project, like it has to be like a big enough question that it warrants having to be a project. And so I tend to find with doctoral students that the biggest problem, especially as they get started, is the argumentation, is what ideas are in there and what order are they in, and are you missing any ideas, or do you have ideas that don't belong? um Sometimes like if you read something and you're like, oh, that's interesting, and then you write a paragraph about it, but does your paper need that paragraph? Does it need that idea? Like going it through and saying, what point am I trying to make about in the first paragraph? What point am I making here? Looking at the headings, looking at the structure, that zoomed out perspective is, I think, really key for developing at that high level.
Great. So can we go to the next slide, please?
Yes,
Which
here
I
we
hope
are.
we put in. I don't remember seeing it, but
It's there.
so thank you all so much. We've had a great time talking with you, and I know that we haven't gotten to all of the really awesome questions people are asking. So we wanted to remind you, you can always connect with us on our social media. This webinar will ultimately be put on YouTube, though I believe Andrea will send you the recording faster, but we have lots of great stuff on YouTube. And if you asked a question and we weren't able to answer it, please email us at styleexpert@apa.org, and we will be sure to get an answer back to you. So thank you all so much. We've really enjoyed talking to you. And please take down that email address, styleexpert@apa.org, and keep an eye out on your email because Andrea will be following up.
I will. So recordings will come to everyone who attended in the next day, and then attendance certificates will follow in the next few weeks. Thank you, everyone, for attending our webinar and for all of your wonderful questions and interactions. Have a great day.